My boss canceled my approved wedding leave 11 weeks out and said, "Marriage is optional. Your job isn't." So I documented everything, emailed the CEO, and showed up on my wedding day, only to watch security drag him out while clients recorded the entire meltdown. Hey Reddit, my boss thought he could wreck my wedding just to flex his authority. I tried to play it cool, keep my job, and move on. But that man wasn't finished ruining my life. Before we get to the chaos he unleashed, let me start from the beginning. I clocked in at 6 a.m. on my wedding day. The office was mostly dark except for the emergency lights and Roman's office in the back corner. He was already there. I could see him through the glass watching me walk to my desk. My ceremony started at 3 p.m. He'd scheduled me until 4 p.m. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. I trust you. But if this doesn't work, we're eloping in Vegas with whatever money we have left. Deal." Let me back up and explain how we got here. 8 months earlier. I'm Tyler, 31, and I sell commercial HVAC systems to contractors and property developers. When someone needs climate control for a 12-story office building or a hospital expansion, they call me. My average sale runs between 80 and 300 grand, and with a 4% commission rate, every contract paid for a little more of the wedding or the honeymoon. Missing work wasn't something you did casually. I'd been with Thermal Solutions for 5 years and was the top performer for 7 straight quarters. Last quarter, I closed 1.2 million, while the next guy barely scraped 780,000. Before that, it was 950,000. Before that, 1.1 million. I wasn't just good. I was bringing in serious money. My advantage was simple. I treated people like humans, not transactions. Contractor calls me at 7 p.m. because a client changed system placement and the load calculations are now wrong? I fix it. Property manager needs emergency specs for a city permit hearing at 8 the next morning? I deliver by midnight. Designer wants to know if a model comes in stainless to match a kitchen? I track down photos. That kind of follow-through made clients protect me. When their customers wanted competitive bids, I got a quiet heads up. When a project needed someone reliable, I was the first call. By year 5, I'd built relationships worth 7 figures annually. My manager, Diane, understood the value of that. She'd run our region for nearly a decade with a philosophy that actually worked. Hit your numbers, handle your accounts, don't cause problems. Everything else was negotiable. Adults were treated like adults. If your performance was solid, time off got approved without drama. Meanwhile, Rachel and I were planning our June wedding. We'd been together 4 years. I met her at a friend's lake house party where she was the only sober person not trying to pilot a jet ski into a dock. She worked as a hospital administrator in surgical scheduling, organized chaos for a living. I'd watched her calmly reorganize 3 surgeries while simultaneously solving a supply shortage for an emergency operation. Nothing rattled her. I proposed at that same lake house the following October, just the 2 of us on the dock after everyone went to bed. No audience, no performance. She said yes before I even finished the question, and started planning out loud while I was still kneeling. Her parents wanted to help pay, and with her dad retiring the next year, we set a timeline. We picked a date 14 months out. Saturday in June, good weather, easy travel. The venue was a vineyard an hour outside the city, with space for 180 guests. Deposit was 12 grand. Photography was 4,500. Flowers, 3 grand. Catering at 90 per head for 180 people came out to 16,000. Add DJ, rentals, invitations. It totaled about 48,000. Her parents covered half. We covered the rest. 8 months before the wedding, I submitted my time off request, 2 days before the wedding, the day of, and 2 days after. I attached the venue contract and a note explaining everything. Diane approved it within half an hour, emailed congratulations, and said she'd been to that venue before, and loved it. The system generated a formal approval with her digital signature. I printed it and filed it with the rest of our wedding documents. Life continued normally. I kept crushing my numbers, training a new sales guy, and gently preventing Rachel from inviting her entire hospital floor. The office itself was a regional hub covering 3 states, 22 salespeople, 12 support staff, engineering, admin, the works. My territory alone held enough contractors and property managers to generate 2 million in potential sales each year, and most of them preferred working with me. Other reps tried imitating my style, but most couldn't sustain the follow-through. Then, one afternoon in March, Diane called me into her office. She looked excited and worried at the same time. "I got promoted to VP of Regional Operations," she said. "Corporate called this morning. They're filling my position next week." I blinked. "With who?" "New guy named Roman." Corporate hire. Strong performance numbers where he came from. But watch yourself. He's got climber energy. What does that mean? Keep your documentation clean and your numbers up. He's the kind who needs to make a mark fast. Sometimes that means shaking things up just to prove he can. I nodded, not really worried. My wedding was 3 months away, my performance was rock solid, and I had every approval documented. As long as I kept doing my job, nothing should have gone wrong. I was completely, spectacularly wrong about that. But at the time, I didn't know what was coming. Roman showed up the following Monday in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and immediately gathered everyone for a mandatory all-hands meeting before business hours even started. At 7:30 a.m., we stood in the conference room while he positioned himself at the head of the table and explained in excruciating detail everything we were doing wrong. According to him, our customer service approach was outdated and too relationship-focused. Our sales methodology lacked discipline. Our work ethic showed signs of complacency. Diane's management style had been far too permissive. And all this was being said to a team that had been the top-performing region in the company for 4 straight years. Roman was maybe 42, ambitious in that corporate climber way, where everything is war and every person is either leverage or dead weight. He made it clear that he planned to use our region as a springboard to his next executive role in 12 to 18 months. We weren't people with families or lives, we were performance metrics. At one point, he actually used the phrase leverage human capital optimization without irony. His new mantra was simple. Loyalty is attendance. Be here, be present, be committed to the organization over personal convenience. Then came the changes. New sales quotas, 25% higher than previous targets with no adjustment period. Mandatory morning meetings at 7 a.m., even though most contractor clients didn't start answering phones until 8:30. A new policy requiring his written approval for any contract over $100,000, which meant I suddenly needed permission for about 70% of my deals. And he dragged every deal through molasses. He'd scrutinize technical specs line by line, question pricing that matched industry standards, push higher margin equipment clients didn't need, and generally hold things up so long that deals which once took 48 hours now took a week. Clients grew frustrated. Some walked. Where Diane had operated on trust, hit your numbers, act like a professional, and you were treated like one. Roman treated time off as a privilege you earned only by exceeding his ever-shifting expectations. Company policy didn't matter. Precedent didn't matter. According to him, approvals don't transfer. Anything Diane had approved was meaningless now. And then he proved he meant it. Within his first few weeks, Roman called Monica from support into his office and revoked the vacation she'd requested 5 months earlier under Diane. She'd already bought plane tickets for herself and her kids and arranged coverage with 2 team members. Roman simply told her personal plans were subordinate to business needs during his restructuring period. She resigned via email that same afternoon without even returning to her desk. Next was Ben from engineering support. His father was scheduled for major heart surgery, and he'd gotten approved leave months earlier. A week before the operation, Roman revoked it, saying engineering couldn't afford gaps during peak proposal season and that family medical issues weren't legitimate operational emergencies. Ben chose his father and was terminated for job abandonment, labeled voluntary resignation to avoid unemployment complications. He got to the hospital in time, but the situation left damage that didn't heal quickly. Then he went after Christina from contracts. Her daughter's high school graduation landed on a Thursday. She'd arranged coverage months in advance. Roman reviewed the pending requests, called her into his office, and forced a choice. Attend the graduation or demonstrate commitment to the team. Not both. She chose her daughter. She was terminated the next morning for prioritizing personal events over critical business functions. People started whispering, but not inside the building, because Roman had a habit of appearing silently in doorways, listening. Conversations moved to parking lots before shifts, coffee shops during lunch breaks, encrypted chats after hours. Everyone reached the same conclusion. He was purging the department. If he made the environment miserable enough, people would quit on their own. Then he could hire cheaper replacements, loyal only to him, and claim he'd improved efficiency by cutting costs. I kept my head down. My wedding was 3 months away, and every commission check was paying for it. I couldn't afford to become a target. I exceeded every quota he set, stayed polite, documented everything, never gave him ammunition. But I watched. He scheduled people for shifts they'd marked unavailable months earlier and acted shocked when they couldn't make it. He criticized employees in front of clients to assert dominance. He changed policies without telling anyone, then wrote people up for violating rules they didn't know existed. And he demanded to be called Mr., not Roman. Mr. He said it reinforced organizational hierarchy. Anyone who slipped and used his first name got corrected publicly and sharply. What struck all of us wasn't that he was strict. It was that he was actively cruel, and every decision seemed calculated to remind us who had power and who didn't. And as each week passed, it became more obvious. Roman wasn't managing a region. He was building a kingdom, and the rest of us were expected to serve. Roman called me into his office on a Tuesday morning in mid-March, exactly 11 weeks before my wedding. I'd just closed a $220,000 hospital HVAC retrofit that morning, after 2 months of negotiations. The client was happy. The contractor was happy. My commission on that deal alone was $8,800, which would cover our honeymoon flights and most of the hotel. His office door was open, but he gestured for me to close it behind me. Never a good sign. He was sitting behind his desk with his laptop open. "I've reviewed your time off request for June." He didn't even look up from his screen. "I'm revoking it effective immediately." I stood there processing what he'd just said. My wedding. I submitted that 8 months ago. Diane approved it. He turned the laptop around to show me my request still in the system, with Diane's approval clearly visible, complete with timestamp and confirmation number. Previous management's decisions don't transfer to my authority. I'm restructuring time-off protocols across the board, and your requested dates fall during our peak proposal season for commercial projects. You need to be here. That's in 11 weeks. I have 180 guests traveling from 6 different states. Venue contract with a $48,000 total cost. Everything's been paid for in non-refundable deposits. The caterer, the photographer, the flowers, everything. He leaned back in his chair. Should have considered that before scheduling personal events during critical business periods. This is about demonstrating commitment to new leadership. You're our top performer on paper. Your presence sets expectations for the rest of the team during this transition. I pulled out my phone and showed him the printed approval document I kept in my wallet. This is an officially approved request with full documentation. Company policy clearly states you need to provide 4 weeks' notice for revocations and only for legitimate operational emergencies. He took the paper directly from my hand and, without breaking eye contact, slowly tore it in half, then in half again, then dropped all 4 pieces into his desk trash can. Diane's signature isn't a contract. It's a suggestion I don't accept. And I'm the manager now, so that paper means absolutely nothing. You can be here or you can find somewhere else to work. Your choice. Though I'd hate to lose someone with your sales record over a personal scheduling conflict that could easily be resolved through better priorities. My jaw clenched. My hands balled into fists at my sides. But I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't give him any satisfaction. I just nodded once and walked out of his office without saying another word. First move. The second I got to my car in the parking lot was forward every single piece of documentation to my personal email account. The original time-off request. Diane's approval email with her congratulations. The system-generated confirmation document. Screenshots of the request in the company portal showing active approval status before he changed it. Everything archived outside company servers where he couldn't delete or modify it. Second move was open a new document on my phone and type out everything that had just happened while it was fresh. Date, time, exact location, what I'd said, what he'd said, how he'd physically torn up the approval document. Detailed notes with timestamps. Then I forwarded that to my personal email too. Third move was request a formal meeting with HR through the company portal, attaching all the documents I'd just archived. I wrote a detailed explanation of the situation, included the full timeline from original request to current revocation, noted the significant financial commitments already made that were non-refundable, and formally requested they enforce the original approval per stated company policy. Then I waited. 3 days of checking my email every hour while trying to act normal at work. 3 days of Rachel asking if HR had responded yet, and me having to say no, not yet. I'm sure they're reviewing everything. 3 days of seeing Roman in meetings with that smug expression. When HR finally sent a meeting request, it was with the regional HR director, Andrea, for 9 a.m. the next morning before my regular shift. I showed up 15 minutes early with printed copies of everything. Every email, every document, every screenshot. The approval. The policy stating revocation requirements. Everything organized in a folder. I thought this would be straightforward. Clear policy violation. Written approval with timestamp. Non-refundable financial commitments. I was completely wrong. Andrea had Roman's written statement already pulled up on her screen when I arrived at exactly 9 a.m. According to his version, he'd informed the entire team during his first week that all previous time-off approvals were subject to review and potential revision under new management priorities, and that everyone, including me, had acknowledged understanding this policy change in writing. He claimed I'd specifically agreed in a one-on-one meeting to maintain flexibility with personal scheduling if business needs required it. Complete fabrication. That conversation never happened. There was no written acknowledgement because I'd never seen any such policy. I showed her my documentation, the email chain with Diane, the approval with clear timestamp 8 months ago, the system-generated confirmation document with Diane's digital signature, policy handbook sections requiring 4-week notice for revocations. Everything laid out chronologically. She reviewed everything, then delivered the verdict. Management has discretionary authority to revoke approved PTO requests for operational requirements. Roman is implementing new protocols that fall within his managerial authority. While I understand this creates personal hardship, the company supports management's operational decision-making during peak business cycles. I asked one simple, direct question. What specific operational emergency requires revoking approved time off that was submitted 8 months in advance? She just repeated the same line about peak season and discretionary authority. Wouldn't answer anything concrete. Just kept cycling back to management discretion and operational requirements. I tried a different angle. The company policy handbook states 4 weeks notice is required for revocations. He gave me 11 weeks technically, but the principle is the same. What's the documented operational emergency? She pulled up an internal document I'd never seen before, showing that exceptions could be made at management discretion for seasonal operational needs. I asked when that policy had been added. She said it had always been there, but previous managers hadn't enforced it strictly. I asked if there was any appeals process. She said I could file a formal complaint, but review would take 6 to 8 weeks minimum, and the decision would likely be upheld anyway. I left that meeting understanding with perfect clarity that the system was designed to protect management regardless of documentation or policy. HR wasn't neutral. They were institutional protection for whoever had authority. I told Rachel that night. She was working on final headcount when I got home and knew immediately something was catastrophic. We're about to lose $24,000 and burn your parents' money because your boss wants to prove he owns you. I'm not letting that happen. How? You escalated to HR and they backed him. If you don't show up, you're fired. If you quit, we lose your income right before the wedding and you lose unvested commission on closed deals. Every option led to the same bad outcome, but I wasn't rolling over. I called Diane that night. When I explained the situation, her response was immediate fury. Roman's been making enemies across regions with this exact behavior. Corporates had complaints, but nothing concrete enough to act on. You need to go straight to the owner. The owner was Frank, who'd founded Thermal Solutions 32 years ago. Still showed up randomly. Still talked to salespeople. Supposedly still cared about culture. I'd met him twice during company events. Email him directly. Diane's tone was urgent. Frank responds to numbers and documented patterns. Give him both. Your sales record, the approval timeline, what HR said, and make sure he knows this isn't isolated. Roman's done this to 3 people already. You're the first with documentation to prove a pattern. I spent 2 hours writing that email, kept it factual, opened with my sales record for 7 quarters with specific numbers, timeline of my request and approval, Roman's revocation and grounds cited, HR's response, then the 3 previous incidents with Monica, Ben, and Christina. Names, dates, outcomes, pattern. Attached every document, sent it at 11:30 at night. Meanwhile, people from the office reached out carefully. Monica found me at a coffee shop 2 days later with a folder of emails. She mentioned there were rumors about why HR protected Roman, but couldn't confirm anything. Said to watch myself because the system was rigged. Ben sent encrypted copies of his termination paperwork. Christina shared her exit documents. I had a paper trail showing systematic abuse. 5 days before the wedding, Roman posted the schedule and put me down for a full shift on my wedding day. 6 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. My ceremony started at 3. I went to his office one more time. Door was open. He was reviewing reports. You scheduled me for a full shift on my wedding day. He didn't look up. That's correct. Guess you're making a choice about priorities. Be here or be terminated for job abandonment. This violates company policy. He finally made eye contact and smiled. Then file a complaint and we'll review it in 6 to 8 weeks. But that ceremony is in 5 days, so the timeline doesn't work in your favor. I pulled out my phone and started typing notes. He watched me, documenting this conversation. Date, time, your exact words. You think documentation matters? I'm management. Your little files don't change reality. We'll see. Anything else you want on record? He leaned back. Feelings don't hit quota. If you're not loyal enough to be here during our busiest season, maybe this isn't the right company for you. I nodded and turned to leave. Heard him say one more thing as I reached the door. Some people learn the hard way that personal lives are subordinate to professional commitments. I made a note of that too. Added it to everything else. Frank responded 48 hours before my wedding. I was home, stressed into insomnia, checking email obsessively. Then his response appeared. The email thanked me for the documentation and said he'd spent 2 days reviewing complaints about Roman from 4 regional offices. What I'd sent was the most detailed proof of a pattern they'd been tracking. Then he said something that made me read it 3 times. He had a plan, and it required me to show up for my shift on my wedding day exactly as scheduled. The rest was vague. He said corporate and legal were involved. Something about needing concrete evidence with witnesses that couldn't be disputed. He couldn't give details in writing for legal reasons, but promised I wouldn't regret trusting him. Show up for your shift, stay calm, watch what happens at noon. Final line was direct. You've been loyal to this company for 5 years and built relationships that generate 7-figure revenue. That's the kind of employee we protect. Trust me. I showed Rachel. She read it twice. Frank is actually going to do this. Apparently. This is insane. What if it doesn't work? Then we're in the same place we'd be if I don't show up and get fired. At least this way there's a plan? She thought about it for a solid minute. Okay, we trust him. But I'm not sitting at home while this happens. If you're going to be there, so am I. Back to 6 a.m. on my wedding day. Roman saw me clock in. Actually showed up. That's what loyalty looks like. I didn't respond. Just went to my desk and started normal routine. Check emails, follow up on proposals, prepare for calls. Everything controlled. The morning crawled. I handled 2 client calls, revised hospital project specs, kept checking my phone. Nothing from Frank. By 11 a.m., I was starting to panic. Ceremony was in 4 hours. Guests were traveling to the venue. Photographer would arrive at 2 p.m. Then at 11:45 a.m., Monica walked in. She'd quit weeks ago. Had no reason to be here. Went straight to the conference room without acknowledging anyone. 10 minutes later, Christina showed up. Then 2 people from other regional offices, all heading to the conference room. Roman noticed and went to investigate. His voice escalated. A minute later, he stormed back looking for me. Why are former employees in my office? Do you know anything about this? No idea. Maybe they're here for meetings. He didn't believe me but couldn't prove anything. Went back to his office, probably to call security. At noon exactly, things accelerated fast. The group emerged from the conference room and started moving furniture in our attached showroom and training floor, the space where we kept full HVAC system displays and did client demonstrations. About 1,500 square feet of open space with industrial ceilings and equipment displays that could be pushed aside. Monica was directing people with clear purpose and what looked like actual floor plans printed out. Frank had apparently reserved the space through building management days earlier for what he'd listed as a corporate event. They pushed display units against walls, cleared the center completely, started setting up chairs in perfectly measured rows with an aisle down the middle. More people arrived carrying boxes of white fabric and professional quality flower arrangements. Not the cheap stuff from a grocery store. Proper wedding flowers that matched what we'd ordered for the vineyard venue. They were transforming the showroom into an actual wedding venue. Roman came running out of his office. What the heck is this? Everyone stop right now. You're all trespassing on private company property. I'm calling the police and corporate immediately. Nobody stopped working. Nobody even acknowledged him. More people streamed through the entrance. They started hanging white fabric from the industrial ceiling mounts we normally used for equipment demonstrations during client presentations. Arranging chairs in sections. Setting up the flower arch we'd ordered for the vineyard. Someone wheeled in a high-end sound system. Someone else started laying down a white runner down the center aisle. This wasn't improvised. This was planned down to the inch. Roman was yelling now, voice cracking. Everyone is fired. Every single person here is terminated effective immediately. This is property destruction. This is disruption of business operations. I'm calling Frank right now, and every one of you is personally getting sued for damages. He pulled out his phone and started dialing frantically. The setup continued around him. White fabric went up on the walls. The flower arrangements were positioned at the end of each row. Someone started testing the sound system with acoustic guitar music. Someone else was setting up what looked like professional lighting equipment on stands. A catering truck pulled up outside the front entrance, visible through the windows, and people started unloading covered trays. 2 clients had come in earlier for scheduled appointments. Tom, from a major contractor I'd worked with for 3 years, arrived at 10 a.m. for contract review and was still there finishing up paperwork. Jennifer from a property management firm had shown up at 10:30 a.m. for system spec consultation, and we'd been working through her project timeline when chaos erupted. They were both standing near the reception desk, looking completely confused. Tom pulled out his phone, started recording everything. Jennifer was taking photos, mouth literally hanging open. Roman noticed the clients. "Stop recording me. Put those phones away right now. This is private property. You don't have legal permission to record. Put them away immediately, or I'll have you removed." He looked around frantically at all the people, all the phones, all the evidence being captured in real time from multiple angles. Looked at the transformation happening despite his direct orders. Looked at me standing calmly at my desk watching everything unfold. "You organized this." He pointed at me. "This is sabotage. This is insubordination. You're all getting arrested for this." I didn't say anything, just stood there and let him dig himself deeper on camera. Then Rachel walked through the front entrance. Wedding dress. Full formal white with a cathedral train that had to be 6 feet long, perfectly pressed. Hair and makeup professionally done, carrying her bouquet of white roses. She walked calmly past Roman, who'd actually stopped mid-sentence to stare at her, past the confused clients with their phones out recording everything, past all the organized chaos of people decorating and setting up, and came straight across the office floor to where I was standing at my desk. "Our ceremony starts at 3 p.m. She said it loud enough for everyone in the office to hear clearly, including the clients and everyone who'd stopped working to watch this scene unfold. "He scheduled you until 4 p.m. on our wedding day, after revoking time off that was approved 8 months ago, with full written documentation. I'm here so nobody can pretend this didn't happen. So there are witnesses to exactly what happens when someone abuses their authority this severely." Silence. The people setting up stopped moving. The clients' phones were both pointed directly at Roman now. Someone from the catering crew had come inside and was also recording on their phone. At least 6 different phones capturing everything from different angles. Frank's legal team had told everyone how to document this properly before they arrived. "Put the phones away. This is harassment. This is a coordinated attack on my authority." Then Frank walked through the front entrance, the owner of the entire company, flanked by Diane and 3 people from corporate legal. Behind them, 2 suits from an external employment law firm. Roman froze. "Roman, stop talking." Frank's voice was calm. "You've done enough. What is this? These people are destroying—" "You weren't enforcing policy. You were auditioning for power." Frank walked past him and came to me. Shook my hand. "Hope you're ready for an interesting afternoon." I couldn't form words. This was surreal. Frank turned to everyone watching. "We've been tracking systematic abuse of authority at multiple locations. Roman's been the biggest problem, canceling approved time off, forcing employees to choose between jobs and families, creating hostile environments." He gestured to me. "This employee submitted properly approved time off 8 months in advance. Every document was flawless. Then Roman revoked it 11 weeks out and scheduled him to work during his ceremony. That's not management discretion. That's abuse creating legal liability." Roman tried to defend himself. "I was establishing operational discipline. Loyalty is attendance. These people need to—" "You're not establishing anything anymore." Diane stepped forward with documents. "We have cases of you canceling approved time off without legitimate need across 4 regional offices. 6 employees quit. 4 were terminated for choosing family over your arbitrary schedule changes. Andrea's been suspended pending investigation." Frank's tone was ice. "She's done. Security arrived. Private firm. Not building security." Frank pointed at Roman. "Escort him out. He's terminated effective immediately for cause. If he attempts to return, call the police. You can't do this. I have contracts. I'll sue. I'll destroy—" "You signed an at-will agreement with behavior clauses. We have emails, timestamps, witness statements, and video from multiple phones. You're welcome to sue, but our legal team costs more than you'll ever make. Now leave." Security took Roman by each arm. He was screaming about lawsuits and corruption the entire way out. Everyone watched him go. Once he was gone, Frank turned back to me. "I need a new regional manager. Someone who understands relationships, respects approved time off, treats employees like professionals. You interested? I just got promoted at my own wedding." "Yes." "Good. Effective immediately. Diane handles transition next week. For now, you have a ceremony at 3. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 with a note. Leadership incentive bonus for exemplary performance and retention of critical client relationships through adverse management conditions. For your honeymoon. You trusted us and kept detailed records. That's the leadership we need." Meanwhile, the venue coordinator was frantically redirecting guests. Mass texts went out with new address and GPS coordinates. Shuttles that had been arranged for the vineyard got rerouted to the office. Staff positioned at the vineyard entrance handed arriving guests printed cards with directions and apologized for the last-minute change. A few guests who'd already arrived at the vineyard were personally escorted by company drivers Frank had arranged. The whole operation ran smoother than it had any right to. Professional decorators finished the showroom transformation. Tables set up for reception. DJ near the break room. At 2 p.m., the full wedding party arrived, shuttled directly from the hotel where they'd been getting ready. Frank insisted on being part of the ceremony since we'd rearranged everything. The entire corporate team attended. Every employee from our office showed up. The contractors and property managers I'd worked with came. Monica stood up with Rachel. The ceremony happened in that showroom between HVAC displays and technical specs boards. Tom, the contractor who'd recorded everything, stood up with me. Monica stood up with Rachel. When we said vows, I could see Roman's empty office in the background. The reception was surreal. We cut cake on a demonstration control panel. DJ played next to thermostat displays. People danced in the main aisle. The refreshments used a granite sample countertop. Frank gave a speech about loyalty working both ways. How companies should protect employees who protect the company. Diane pulled me aside and promised full support. Mentioned 2 other managers at different locations were under investigation. Roman wasn't isolated. Rachel and I had our first dance in the client consultation area. She was laughing. This is completely insane. Our office now. I'm the regional manager. She kissed me in front of everyone. Best wedding ever. The honeymoon was 3 weeks in Hawaii using Frank's $50,000. We stayed at resorts we couldn't have afforded otherwise and decompressed. When we got back, I started the new position. First policy change was approved, time off gets honored unless there's a documented emergency. Second was all management decisions in writing. Word spread fast. Employees from other regions requested transfers. Within 3 months, we were fully staffed. Sales increased. Andrea was terminated after investigation found multiple violations. They brought in someone new from outside. Monica and Christina were offered their positions back with back pay and apology letters. Monica came back. Christina had found a better situation and politely declined. Ben was also offered his position back, but chose to stay at the job he'd found after leaving. Roman tried to sue. His lawyer sent letters for 4 months. Corporate's legal team responded with a 47-page brief including timestamps, witness statements, and video evidence from multiple phones. His lawyers dropped it before discovery. Diane called monthly checking how transition was going. She'd been fighting behind the scenes more than I'd known. When Roman first canceled my time off, she'd gone to Frank with concerns. That started the investigation. The wedding photos ended up in a business magazine article about unconventional corporate culture. We framed one and hung it in the office break room. Rachel tells the story at every family gathering. Nobody believes you got promoted during your wedding, while your boss got escorted out by security. But we have the documentation. 7 months later, the arbitration hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in January. Roman's lawyers got him a hearing to argue wrongful termination. Frank asked if I wanted to be there for the final confrontation. I showed up to the conference room at 9 a.m. Frank, Diane, and 2 corporate lawyers were already there. Roman arrived 10 minutes late with one lawyer who looked like he wished he'd taken a different case. The arbiter was a retired judge named Patterson. He reviewed documents for 30 minutes in silence, then started asking questions. Roman, you're claiming wrongful termination on what grounds? I was fired for implementing legitimate management policies. They set me up because I was effective and threatened comfortable arrangements. The arbiter looked at documents. You canceled approved time off for 6 employees in 3 months. Can you explain the operational necessity? I had authority to restructure schedules during critical business periods. The arbiter pulled out my request. This employee's wedding was approved 8 months in advance. You revoked it with 11 weeks' notice. What was the specific operational emergency? Roman hesitated. Peak season required all top performers available for quarterly targets. Then, why schedule him until 4 p.m. when his ceremony started at 3 p.m.? Why specifically a schedule that guaranteed he'd miss his wedding? Silence. Roman didn't have an answer. His lawyer jumped in about management discretion. The arbiter cut him off. The specific hours demonstrate intent. He flipped through pages. 6 employees. 1 missed his father's surgery. 1 missed her daughter's graduation. 1 was terminated for her grandmother's funeral. All had approved time off canceled. All under your management. All within 3 months. He closed the folder. This is termination for cause with overwhelming proof. Claim dismissed. Roman, you're responsible for arbitration costs per your agreement. Roman stood fast enough his chair fell. This is corruption. I'll appeal to real court. The arbiter didn't look up. You can appeal, but this ruling stands. We're done here. Roman stared at me. You destroyed my career over a wedding. One day. You ruined everything over one single day. I kept my voice completely calm. No. You destroyed your career by treating people like property. I just kept detailed records and trusted the right people at the right time. His lawyer grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. I watched him leave and felt nothing. Just confirmation that systems work when you understand how to use them. Frank shook my hand outside after. How's the region performing? We closed 4.2 million last quarter, up 18% from Roman's best. Retention's at 94%. That's what good management looks like. You made the right call. Frank smiled. Diane's up for SVP next month. You interested in regional VP when she moves up? 5 regions instead of 1? I'd been managing 1 region for 6 months. Regional VP was 5 regions, 40 employees, budget 10 times larger. That's significant. Your numbers say you can handle it. Think about it. Let me know by end of week. I drove back thinking about Roman in that hearing, trying to explain why he'd scheduled someone through their wedding ceremony. Thought about Monica and Ben and Christina forced out for choosing family. Thought about how I'd been ready to lose everything, and the only thing that saved me was keeping proper records. Rachel called while I was driving. How'd it go? Dismissed. Roman's responsible for costs. It's over. Good. She paused. Frank offered you regional VP yet? How did you know? Diane called me last week to ask if you'd be interested in relocating if needed. I told her yes. You made that decision without asking me? I made the decision that we go where the opportunity is. You earned this. Take it. Yeah, I'm taking the promotion. Good. Now come home. We're celebrating, and I'm not taking no for anyone. I thought about that confrontation. The look on Roman's face when he realized emails and timestamps beat authority every time. The arbiter dismissing his case because the evidence was overwhelming. Loyalty is attendance. That was his signature line. Turns out loyalty is actually showing up for the people who show up for you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.